think it became very clear when I realized, hey, there's still so much work to do. There's a lot of fragmentation when it comes to localization. You might have something available in the US, but it might not translate as well to the Asian context that we have. When we talk to HR sometimes, they've done everything right. They've negotiated the best comp and ben package for their employees. They have all these beautiful perks and benefits in there. And then at the end of the year, they're like, but nobody used it. It's there, but it's burned. Then why should I do it? And so then the question is, was it the right fit? I can just talk to ChatGPT and they'll know exactly what I want. Do it with your eyes open because it is an echo chamber. And it will tell you what you would want to hear, which is not the role of a certified mental health professional, right? At the end of the day.
Hi everyone, welcome to HR and Beyond, podcast where we're talking about culture, leaders, and people. Today we're diving into the topic of well-being, the topic which moved, especially in the COVID era, from margins to the center of organizational attentions, and we're excited to welcome our guest.
To explore this topic, we are joined by Joan Low. Joan is the founder and CEO of ThoughtFull, which is the leading digital mental health platform in Asia, with a simple yet powerful message to simplify mental health for growth. Joan might be humble in her approach, but she's a thoughtful leader in this space. She's been featured in Forbes, Straits Times, The Peak, to name a few, and we are very honored to have her here. Joan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Joan, can you share a little bit more with your experience? What led you to this space and whether there's been any defining moment?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me here. I'm Joan. I'm the founder and CEO for ThoughtFull. Mental health was something I would say is a calling that's more than 20 years in the making. Did not expect to be doing mental health, but I think I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. My own background, honestly, was actually in finance before. So, after leaving Malaysia and then spending time in North America, I moved to Hong Kong and was in finance for about 6 years at a Wall Street bank. And then when I was thinking about that next chapter, impact was one that I was looking at, but also, something that that went beyond just a typical career progression. I actually didn't know what it would be. But mental health came about and became very apparent to be a calling because when I went back to Malaysia and spent some time there, I think that's when I realized how much more work there was to be done. We've been mental health caregivers for a very long time, so more than 2.5 decades now. So mental health is actually not foreign as a topic to us. It was really led by curiosity. I think some of the questions at that point, and this is pre-pandemic, 2018 and 2019, some of the questions that I was curious about was, why is it that after 20 years, some of these problems as a caregiving family are still prevalent? Why is it something that is still quite fragmented? It was a bit of a gray zone. There were treatments we were trying to look for, which, we didn't know whether it existed. And so there was just so many things that came about. And I think one thing led to the other. Sometimes if you lean into your curiosity, you never know where it takes you. And I think for me, it led me down a path of going deeper into understanding the mental health landscape, not just, from one country specifically or one family specifically, but across the region and across the system of healthcare. And I think at that point, I think it became very clear when I realized, hey, there's still so much work to do. There's a lot of fragmentation when it comes to localization. You might have something available in the US, but it might not translate as well to, the Asian context that we have for the people we have. And yeah, I think one thing led to the other, and that's how ThoughtFull really started. 2019, I started doing our proof of concepts for the text-based therapy, and then by 2020, we were actually ready to launch. did not know the world would go upside down with the pandemic.
So true, yes.
But it was almost like a lightning in a bottle, right? And that's why I say it's a calling, because like one thing led to the other, and then the timing just came about, and then thoughtful launched, and since then the mission has always been the same. We know mental health is complex across regions, across family contexts, across individuals even, and we always want to simplify this whole journey for people so that if they want to grow professionally or personally, they can. And it's all, easy within the app context and, within the power of their own mobile devices. And so, yeah, that's how Thoughtful came about.
So maybe tell us a bit more about Thoughtful. I think for the listeners to understand what is this about,
Yeah.
who is the target audience, can we use it as individuals or it's more tailored for the corporates?
Yeah, sure. So Thoughtful's main mission is to simplify the journey of mental health so that professionally or personally, if you want to grow, you can. You have the resources at hand. It's all available through Thoughtful's app, where you can access the whole end-to-end, spectrum of resources. So whether or not you're looking to thrive in your everyday life, and incorporate habits that will help with better mental well-being, you can. Mood trackers, thought journals, self-assessments even, to see where you're currently at for your anxiety levels or, burnout levels or whatever it is. All of that is within the app. If ever you want to go a little deeper, maybe led by curiosity as well, and speak to someone who's actually qualified. So these are humans. For now, everyone you speak to on the front end are humans. I have to caveat this. They are not AI bots yet. And so our algorithms will actually match you to your best fit mental health professional. And you can text anytime, anywhere, unlimited, and they'll get back to you within the day itself. And I think it's more of an unstructured way of exploring your well-being with someone, and also an opportunity to build rapport and explore who might work best for you. Because sometimes these things are also a bit of a chemistry, right? And I will caveat that as well, because sometimes people will be like, oh, I can just talk to ChatGPT and they'll know exactly what I want.
Which happens a lot now.
Yeah, it's a whole topic in and of itself. Do it with your eyes open, because it is an echo chamber. And it will tell you what you would want to hear, which is not the role of a certified mental health professional, right? At the end of the day, sometimes it's about reflecting and telling you what you need to hear. And so I think that's the biggest difference right now, because the agents are not quite there yet. And so, so on Thoughtful, you can do text-based therapy. We are the first to actually clinically prove that even as a standalone, if you're just chatting on our text-based therapy, you will be able to experience improvements in depression, anxiety, and stress. And so we've done studies for that and have shown that. And then the rest would be, video therapy, face-to-face hotlines. We kind of do the whole end-to-end spectrum. A lot of the work we do now is actually very corporate. So we work a lot with HRs, which I guess for HR and beyond, I guess this, is very relevant. The majority of the work we do would be employers engaging us to essentially make this available to all their employees.
Joan, you mentioned, I think earlier, that there's a big difference between the US market and Asian market, and that's why you saw the opportunity to go into this space. Can you share just like few, features to the Asian market when it comes to mental health that we need to be more aware of?
A very good question, because I think the cultural context for mental well-being specifically is actually even more important or acute than any other form of health and well-being, right? Because it's the questions of the heart, it's questions of the mind and of the emotion sometimes. And I think one of the biggest differences at the beginning when we saw is around, I guess, the openness of the topic itself. I spent a lot of time in North America, and no one would bat an eye to share that they're going for their therapy session at the lunch table or in the cafeteria. It's almost like a status symbol if their insurance, if their policy actually covers mental health, because it means you have a more premium type of coverage, right? So it's a little different when it comes to the openness of the topic. When we started before the pandemic, just before the pandemic leading into it, uh, it's not the case. And even until today, even with, the Singapore's government coming in very, encouragingly to everyone to, normalize the topic of mental well-being. I don't think it's your typical round-the-mill cafe or lunch kind of conversation yet. So I think in terms of the openness to the topic, while it's changing, I think that was the biggest difference. And we've seen it evolve with, generations younger being more open and things, and post-pandemic, it's more normalized. So that's great. I think the other one as well is actually how people access care. And this is actually quite specific to how healthcare systems are structured. And I think this is why, sometimes people think, oh, you just copy and paste the model. It's so easy. It's actually not when it comes to healthcare, and when it comes to a very undercovered part of healthcare like mental health. You'll find that from country to country, you have to navigate different ways of accessing the care. In the US, for example, because it's quite commonplace for your insurance to cover it, people won't bat an eye, right? It's part of the coverage. They go to the panel, done. But over here, it's not that case. And so then you have to figure out, hey, like firstly, do I really need this? That's the first mental hurdle, right? To kind of to come over. And then secondly, if I do need it, then, or if I could benefit from it, then which pathway do I go? The government pathway, the private pathway? And then it branches out even more, and every country is different. And then if I want to go down the private pathway, are there any subsidies that are available, or, who's gonna pay unless you yourself out of pocket can pay? And so there's so many layers to it. Which I think is very, very nuanced from country to country. So that's another part of it. The third part, apart from stigma and access, I think it's just the cultural aspect itself. People think Asia is one big mass of of people. It's actually not. I mean, growing up in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, and here in Singapore, I mean, at any one point, one sentence we speak will have like 5 languages mixed together. And it makes sense to us, but maybe not anyone else. And I think when you have this kind of multiculturalism, it makes matters of the heart, the mind, and the emotion even more complex and nuanced. And I think that is quite different to countries where it's a bit more homogenous. And again, I'm fully recognizing that the US is diverse in its own aspects as well, but there are large swaths of English speaking kind of population, right? And it's not quite the case across the different parts of Asia. So these three parts I think are very important to consider.
Yeah. But I read statistic as I was preparing for the podcast that the level of awareness since COVID increased quite significantly about mental well-being. So we do see progress, but at the same time, I think we do see that probably some people and companies also reverse back in some ways when it comes to mental well-being. I think one of the things is something you mentioned about youth. So I see among my peers that sometimes the fact that younger generation are intentionally seeking for some help or talking about it openly is looked down upon as though it's a weakness. And also that young generation can abuse mental well-being in expense of performance. So usually as you work with corporates, how do you help them reconcile both? Like that there is a progress, but at the same time, there are still certain stereotypes which hold us back.
It's a complex situation that is ever evolving, which I think makes for a more enriching kind of conversation, right? Because for the first time, we're moving into a situation where we almost have three different types of generations or more working in the same workplace. You have your ex-cos, for example, at the very, very top, your baby boomers and such, or Gen Ys. And then majority now, as studies are showing, you've got the largest amount of millennials stepping into the middle management kind of layer. And then you have all these new workforce entrants who grew up in an era where, number one, there's only ever been technology all around them, and synchronicity across everything, and also went through a really tough period that no one else has had just before entering the workforce, where there were lockdowns, isolation, and things like that, right? And I think when it comes to balancing out the different needs of each of the generation, and all of them will have their own valid points. It's true. Of course, there are always going to be points of debate in each generation, but everyone has their own stance on it for good reason, right? And if I were to break it down, I would say that at the end of the day, it's going to be a balance of where do we meet in the middle, where the needs of well-being, and I'm not just talking about mental well-being, but physical well-being is also a very huge part of the new generation's priority list at this point. Just general well-being as a whole. How do we balance that out at the individual level whilst not sacrificing or using it as a weapon against expectations that have been set upon in the typical employer-employee relationship? I think this is where, at the end of the day, that clarity needs to be there. And I think we need to make it clear. We need to explain that, because when you grew up in an environment where everything is fluid, you're constantly connected to everything, right? You're talking about a large part of new workers who are connected all the time. The whole idea of borders and boundaries of professional, personal, relationship versus not family, friends, professional, it's all blended together.
Yes.
You're following your bosses on Instagram and you're following your interns on TikTok. Like everyone's connected. The boundaries are so blurred now that sometimes I think it's also incumbent upon those with maybe a little bit more experience to then share about, hey, this is how the professional setup is, which they might not know because a lot of them were deprived of actual in-office internship experience, which many of the millennials had, right? As well as the generations before. These folks were working remotely, if at all, freelancing during the pandemic, and that was their work experience. So the idea of boundaries, the idea of entitlements, of what is expected from an employer versus not, is actually not so clear to them. And so I think open communication about that would be helpful. And likewise as well, I think for the, I don't want to say the older generation, but people who are in positions
more
of
experience,
positions of influence in the company. I think also understanding, hey, it is true that they are coming in. This is the most anxious generation you have that are coming into the workforce, and so with clear boundaries, of course, of knowing where their role is as a manager. And sometimes, the manager ends up being a counselor, which is totally out of their pay grade and they shouldn't be. That's where you refer it to folks like us.
Yes,
But within those boundaries, also just give a listening ear and see, hey, like, are there specific things that can be met, or where we can meet in the middle, and kind of make that clear, right? But at the end of the day, I always tell even my in our own context, right? a job is a job. It is a contractual agreement between an employer and an employee. I think at the end of the day, there are certain scopes of work and performance and behaviors that are expected within that engagement. And I think at the end of the day, the professional relationship is there. And I think, where the boundaries are between that versus going above and beyond needs to be very clear from the outset, especially when we have a generation that's quite boundless in terms of like the entire ecosystem that they have. So yeah, just clarity across the different generations would be good.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I think they're always on now.
Yeah, now as you
Yeah,
put in
it's
such a
standard.
different perspective, I feel like lucky being a millennial.
The best of both worlds, We have enough, I guess, enough chill factor to understand, like, hey, well-being is important, and we ourselves prioritize that. But we've also grown up in an era where there were clearer boundaries.
Yeah.
There were clearer kind of sets of norms in the professional setting that have kind of at least helped us bridge the two sides, right? So yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon at this stage.
Yeah. Well, since we also discussed, I guess, some of the reverse effects, right, of mental health, something we've discussed together is the DI initiatives rolling back in the US. It's a interesting and strange time, I must say. And I'm curious, I guess, to hear from you. Has there been any already side effects in Asia from all these new initiatives of going back to the old norms in Asia? And what is the implication, I guess, on the mental health and well-being overall?
I think we are at this juncture, and I don't know about you, but I do believe that the world moves in cycles. Just like financial markets, trends, generations, they move in cycles, even fashion, all moves in cycles, right? And so I think it's interesting because we're at this juncture where movements like, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which sometimes also, has mental well-being and well-being in general under that umbrella. When you have movements like that kind of take off in different parts of the world at an earlier cycle, what you'll see is that it goes through one cycle, and then sometimes there's almost like a feeling of taking a step back or being pulled back again, or a reversal, so to speak. And I think, for some parts of the world, we are seeing that. I think for the last decade plus, there's been a very strong movement towards, opening up policies, including different types of, I guess, abilities, demographics, and such within the workplace context, and also beyond schools and things like that, academic settings as well. And I think this has been a movement that's been building up and really setting the stage for where we are today. And I think some parts of the global phenomenon have also accelerated that, right? Like the pandemic, where suddenly, hybrid work, remote work, all of these things, everything got changed, and suddenly a lot of norms got questioned even faster than normal. And mental health was one of them. Suddenly everyone was rushing to include it into, employee assistance programs into their program if it wasn't before in their benefits plan. And so I think what we're seeing is in some areas of the world, like North America and Europe, for example, they've gone really hard with that movement, especially in certain industries like, big tech, for example. And it's taken on a different life form in the form of like free food and beanbags and gyms and hair salons and masseuse in the,
You don't
on
need home
campus.
anymore.
You don't need to go home anymore. So you have everything, right? And they almost like cocoon you
Yeah.
in this whole inclusive space of work and well-being. And again, back to the topic just now of how boundaries are then totally grayed out, right? Because it's all there. So you have that. And I think it's gone so far off to one end where you're almost seeing people question, hey, is this actually working for the employees? Is it actually working for the company and its goals? Is it working for the PN? All of these things are coming in, right? And we're in a stage where I think a lot of companies are also dealing with things like economic cycles that are not doing so great right now. A lot of uncertainty geopolitically, and the world's changing very quickly. You're also having to deal with things like inflation and costs going up across the board. And so from a company perspective, in a very practical sense, you can see why all of these things are coming under assessment, in fairness. Are they going to pull back completely? I don't think it's something that would be possible to do anymore, nor is it advisable. And simply because I think a lot of this is foundational, right? At the end of the day, you still want productive employees, and it is proven that right now, for example, latest stats is 60% of your workforce are probably on the brink or already at burnout. And so if you want to continue having a productive and thriving company, then these are not nice to haves anymore, but must haves as infrastructure within your company. So whether or not you're pulling back on DEI from a budget perspective, or maybe reviewing some of the policies or reviewing some of the norms, I think there is a baseline that has already been set, which will not change. And it won't affect companies continuing to put all of these in place. And so I think there's a lot of headlines, there's a lot of hoo-ha around that, especially in the last couple of months in the US, pulling back DEI, everyone
Going
go back to work,
office.
come back to
Yes.
office 5 days a week. You're gonna swipe your cards like it is. Back then they used the timestamp thing.
Yes.
It's almost like we're moving back to that era, but I think there is a larger context around it, and I don't think it's if we went from 0 to 100, it's not a pullback all the way back to 0. It's probably back to a baseline of maybe like 50, where it's meeting in the middle of what's actually needed versus everything else that maybe is under review.
Yeah.
Now that's the US, right? If you talk about Asia, it's a very different situation for Asia Pac, and I would say a majority of the global South, as one would call it, because we are starting from a very different baseline.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. We are, if North America is going through that cycle already, we are maybe only a third into the cycle that they were in 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
We have so many clients, for example, who are literally looking at mental well-being and building the infrastructure for their employees for the first time. We have a lot of first-time clients, and these are in some of your industries that are very foundational to nations. And so are we at the 0 to 100 yet? No, we're maybe at 25. We are very far off from where we need to be pulling back, I would say. And so the opportunity is there to catch up. The opportunity is also there to learn from other cycles, to see what is necessary and maybe what's not, and also to adapt those learnings to the local context. And so I think there's so much more work still to do here.
Joan, you referred to the baseline, and as you said, a lot of companies are still even doing the first step to that baseline. What would be the baseline for you, for organization that is considering, where I do need to have baseline for my employees beyond just salaries?
Yes. I think it really depends on where the company is at. I shy away from making generalizations because even within regions like Asia, you would find that there's a huge disparity across where the starting point is, and it could be viewed from a cross section of public versus private companies. It could be viewed across different industries, for example, different countries. All of them have very different starting points. Now, if I were to go and zoom into, let's say, a scenario where it's literally ground zero, then a lot of the work has to be incremental. Because if it's ground zero, and if the industry, let's say, is one where it's a bit more entrenched in the traditional norms, and you're talking about, it could be it could be like transportation or manufacturing floors, like those kind of environments, plantations, for example. These are situations where you almost have to assess it from their level, not from where you think ideal state should be, because it won't work. And that's what we do a lot, right, at ThoughtFull. We have to really understand what the client needs, what their starting point is, and then build with them. For us, we always focus on building long-term partnerships and relationships because it's about growing it together, as opposed to just saying, hey, we have all of these offerings, slap it on and then move on. It's not really the case. And so when it's ground zero at that stage, sometimes really the baseline is maybe start with a bit of measurement first. So one thing that we realized was a gap in the industry as well, was the lack of quantifiable ways or means of seeing whether or not, of firstly assessing where an organization is, which is why we came up with this organizational mental well-being assessment, just to see where things are as a baseline. And then from there, it would inform you on what's needed and at what time, and in which area. So sometimes it's starting with just that, building the awareness of, hey, this is where we are today. So we have some companies that start with that. And then there's a lot of education and I don't want to talk about education in the sense of a one-way street. It's actually both sides. So for example, we cover some of the largest, manufacturers and transportation companies here. And the learning and educating is on both sides, because sometimes you're dealing with a very different blue-collar demographic.
Yeah, their experience is different from ours. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, if they are working in a shift cycle and what is most pressing for them from a stressor perspective or a daily life perspective is, maybe financial in nature, or maybe just literally balancing their schedule of night shift versus morning shift and swapping all of that around. Talking to them about therapy might not be the best thing. It's not what's most important to them, right? And so that education process needs to be catered accordingly. And I would say these two would set the first baseline before you can move up into what I would call almost the interventional phases, right? Where then you can say, oh, maybe coaching, maybe breathing exercises, maybe, therapy, whatever it is. Then you move into that later. But if you try to start with that for a scenario where it's truly ground zero, it might be a big leap. Like, this is not one where you can leapfrog too quickly.
You need to go step by step.
You have to work with the people who you're there to serve and truly serve them at where they are. And I think that's probably something that I think HR would appreciate as well, because when we talk to HR, sometimes they've done everything right. They've negotiated the best comp and ben package for their employees. They have all these beautiful perks and benefits in there. And then at the end of the year, they're like, but nobody used it. It's there, but it's burned. And so then why should I do it? And so then the question is not about, why should I do it? But it's, hey, it's there, but was it the right fit?
Yeah, and the right time.
And
Yeah.
the right time for the right target audience, because you also have companies where you have white collar and then blue collar. You have people who are in plantations on the factory floor, but you also have your C-suites. And so then are we catering the benefits and the mental well-being resources accordingly to your different demographic? And so I think that is probably where the art and the science lies. And that's where I would say the most impact can be made when you get that piece of, I guess, portfolio mix right.
Yeah, to customize it, definitely. I think nowadays it's all about customization.
And communication.
Yes.
And what? Sorry,
yeah.
Yes, customization and communication. There you go. Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of our discussion. So I wanted just to, wrap up this and ask you, how do you keep your mental health in check? Any useful tips for our listeners?
Oh boy. Track your sleep.
Good.
Yes, I also have.
This is not a paid ad, by the way, but it is something that even at ThoughtFull we are moving towards a lot. I think personally, it really depends on my season in life. And I want to really caveat this as well, because I think sometimes people think there is this ideal picture of work-life balance for a working mother, for a founder, or whatever it is. And I don't want that to be the baseline assumption, because that's also how people then feel really bad about themselves when they don't meet it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's something I've had to learn over time as I transitioned from, someone who didn't have kids and now I do. And I realized that really you will have different seasons in life. There will be points in time where you'll be very overweight on something. For example, first 6 months of having a baby, and we have children, right? Like the first 6 months, literally, you're not going to have the energy to go walk on a treadmill, do my yoga 3 times a week, do meditation. I mean, like, when are you going to find time for that? And I don't think we should be hard on ourselves if we don't have that time, right? But find what works for you. For me, it's at that time, during that season in life and that chapter, trying to get as much sleep as possible whenever my baby was sleeping was as best as I could go. Because it meant that at least I wouldn't be running on fumes, right? And then as, I transitioned into, I guess, a little bit more routine stability as my kid grew, and, I got used to the routine of running a company and marriage and all of that. Then things started so-called normalizing to what it used to look like a bit more, which was, okay, I can get some yoga in, I can actually get some meditation in and all of that. And so I think regardless of what it is, cater it to which season you're in. Yeah. And for me, that's why I don't have a straight answer, because it really depends on where I am right now. Right now, for me, I mean, as you can tell,
Congratulations
with what's happening
on your little one.
It's really trying to get in, prioritizing my sleep. One thing that's stuck with me throughout, though, is actually journaling. So I do that a lot, as well as chatting with someone, because I think that was something that I could always have as a pressure valve, regardless of which season, actually. At the end of the day, the pressures will come from different areas. We'll have different ways of releasing that pressure. Journaling was something I could always bring with me, and it's a practice I've had since like 2010, so it's been like 15 years now. I've always kept that. Talking to someone and not dumping it on just my husband was also a very big breakthrough, probably more for him than me, because he's not the pseudotherapist anymore. But just having sometimes quick takes, and just like a almost a place for releasing some of that pressure has been quite helpful. So yeah, different seasons will have different things, but there were two things that have been kind of more consistent than others.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joan.
To all the listeners, we definitely encourage you to download the app Thoughtful, discover it for yourself, and also share with us what are your tips and tricks, to keep your mental well-being in check. Thank you, Joan, for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
It was super useful. Thank you.
Yes.
That's all for today's episode of HR and Beyond.
Please subscribe, follow, and recommend us to your friends and colleagues.
We would love to hear your thoughts or questions. Connect with us on LinkedIn or send us a message.
As we say in Kazakhstan,
Alga, which means onward. Take care, and until next time.